Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. U.S. President Donald Trump backed down on Wednesday on his threat to use force to annex Greenland. He said a plan had been worked out for the U.S. to have permanent access to the territory, but details have been scarce. Other than that, talks will continue. The territory's prime minister spoke to reporters in Nuuk, Greenland, and APTN News video journalist Angel Moore was there.
At the Nuuk Cultural Center, Greenland's Prime Minister Jan Fredrik Nielsen spoke about Trump's plans. He said there is a high-level working group to find a solution using respectful, democratic dialogue to protect the Arctic. And although he is not aware of the details, he said minerals were not discussed and that Greenland and Denmark's sovereignty is a red line that cannot be crossed.
First of all, nobody else than Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark have the mandate to make deals or agreements about Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark without us. That's not going to happen.
The Inuit located in northern Labrador have historical ties with Greenland. Earlier today, President Lamp of the Nunavut government said in an email statement, "The people of Greenland, many of whom are Inuit, have the right to choose their own destiny. The Nunavut government stands firmly in solidarity with our Inuit brothers and sisters in Greenland in defending their sovereignty and self-determinations." A reporter asked Nielsen if he could believe Trump would not use force to take the territory.
This is, as I said, this is about world order. This is about international law. This is about respecting territorial integrity. I believe that the world will not take that turn so drastically. I have to believe that, and I believe the Western Alliance, in a good partnership, can grow to be better.
Meanwhile, Greenlanders' lives go on as normal, and I will be speaking to local Inuit just about that. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Nuuk, Greenland.
It's been 2 weeks since an immigration and customs enforcement agent fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Protests have broken out there since her death. At the same time, ICE officers have continued detaining residents in Minneapolis. As our reporter Savannah Craig shares, Native Americans are also getting stopped and detained by ICE agents.
Charge! For what? What's the charge? What's she arrested for? What the is the charge? Get out of the road. Get out of the road.
The man yelling in the video is trying to help his friend, a Native American woman being arrested by immigrations and customs enforcement agents, better known as ICE.
Where's your dog? Where's your dog at?
Last Wednesday, Sophie Wetzel was arrested and detained by ICE in Minnesota.
My cousin had been taken by ICE. It's absurd that indigenous people are being detained by ICE, which there's not one person who's more citizen than an indigenous person on Turtle Island.
Xavier Wetzel is an Abenaki actor and influencer based in Quebec. Their cousin Sophie is Abenaki and Dakota living in Minneapolis. After her arrest, Xavier took to social media to call for action.
Du centre de détention où est-ce qu'elle est. Mais l'affaire, c'est que ICE kidnappe n'importe qui, tellement de monde.
Xavier says Sophie was released a few days later.
Let him scan your face. Why'd you hit him? No!
Just a day before the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent, 20-year-old Jose Roberto Beto Ramirez was arrested and detained by ICE in Minneapolis. He is a U.S. citizen and Ojibwe from Red Lake Nation. The detention of Native Americans goes beyond Minneapolis.
Everybody in here U.S. citizen?
We're first ones. We're Native American. We're the first ones.
This video posted online in June of last year shows ICE stopping Kahnawake Thumb Native Americans in Arizona. Journalist Mark Trahant says Indigenous people are being racially profiled alongside other nationalities.
They do not have the right to ask you for identification. They keep trying, but legally, I mean, that goes back to the whole Nazi era of your papers, please. And you do not have to carry papers in the United States. You do if you're a green card holder.
According to the Migration Policy Institute, ICE detentions have almost doubled under the Trump administration. As of January 7, 2026, ICE's daily detention average has increased to 70,000 from 39,000 when Trump returned to office.
They are falling deeply back
into history and into the moments in time where we were sought after, chased after, and murdered for the sake of westward expansion.
Sikawis Nobis is Plains Cree and Saulteaux from George Gordon First Nation. She now lives in the United States. Nobis says the Trump administration is trying to dismantle the revival of Indigenous sovereignty, culture, and tribal power.
It's really scary to think that they're setting up detention centers and that they're abducting Indigenous peoples already that have rightful places to be here.
Xavier says those stopped by ICE agents can use their phone as a tool.
I think everybody should be aware, be careful, make sure to document and film any interaction they see of ICE going around. I think it's time to put our money where our mouth is and to not go to the United States or try to boycott different United States products.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
The RCMP are saying that a suspect has been arrested in connection to a 19-year-old homicide case in Alberta. According to the RCMP, progress in the case was made possible with the help of Samson Cree Nation community members. RCMP charged Alvin Lee Norman Green with second-degree murder earlier this week in connection to the February 2007 death of Jonathan Cody Saddleback. Both were residents of Musqueam, which consists of 4 First Nations, including Samson Cree Nation, where the case originated. RCMP say most cases are solved with forensic evidence. Quote, this breakthrough was rooted in the resilience of the community and a strengthening partnership between residents and the police. Samson Cree Nation Chief Vernon Saddleback added that, quote, when we stand together and share what we know, we create a safer and more just path forward for all our people. Green was expected to make his first court appearance today. A man has been killed in Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory, following a fatal shooting on Wednesday. 40-year-old Kyle Chad Grabowski suffered multiple gunshot wounds. He was attacked while leaving Robbie's Smokehouse and Burger Bar, a restaurant in Kahnawake. The Kahnawake Mohawk peacekeepers say a vehicle was found on fire in Chateauguay following the shooting. APTN News reached out to the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, the Sûreté de Quebec, and the Kahnawake peacekeepers for an interview. Council did not respond to our email request. The peacekeepers could not provide an interview before deadline. The Sûreté de Quebec referred APTN to the peacekeepers, stating it is their case. Former Yukon Premier Mike Pemberton resigned as the territory's Liberal Party's leader on Wednesday. Pemberton took over as party leader last summer after former Premier Ranj Pele announced he was stepping down from the role. He became Premier without holding a seat in the Yukon Legislative Assembly. During last year's territorial election, the Liberals were pummeled by the Conservative-leaning Yukon Party, winning just 1 of 21 seats. The party's executive committee has appointed the party's only sitting MLA, Vundit Gwitchin MLA Deborah Lee Rati, as its interim leader. Rati represents the riding of Vundit Gwitchin in the fly-in community of Old Crow. The party's annual general meeting will take place tonight in Whitehorse. Topics on its agenda include a leadership review. Jeremy Tunraluk has resigned from his position as president of Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, an organization that ensures that promises made under the Nunavut Agreement are carried out. Tunraluk has been on unpaid leave since December. He was charged with assault with a weapon causing bodily harm. That charge was later stayed by the Crown. NTI announced its board accepted Tunraluk's resignation Wednesday evening, effective immediately. NTI also announced that its members voted to hold a by-election for president at the end of 2026. Tunraluk has announced that he will be seeking re-election. In the meantime, Vice President Paul Erngo will continue to serve as president. Well, we're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to our website, aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. On January 9th, a cancer patient at a Saskatoon hospital died after an altercation with security guards. Here's a quick look at what our video journalist Rachel May is working on with that story.
After a fight with security guards at the Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon, Trevor Dubois lost his life. According to Saskatoon police, Dubois was in possession of drugs and an imitation firearm when he died. The Dubois family has some serious questions about what the police are saying. Then today, measures were announced that health and safety officials hope will stop something like this from ever happening again. We will have more on what those measures are and what the family is saying on tomorrow's show.
Welcome back. A speech by Prime Minister Mark Carney at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week has garnered international coverage and high praise from many, with the exception of U.S. President Donald Trump, who took his own shots at the Canadian PM. It all comes against the backdrop of Trump's fixation with acquiring Greenland. For more on this, our Truth and Politics panel is here. Jennifer Leywitz is the CEO of Pasqua Strategies, and Niigaan Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Jen, Niigaan, fantastic to see you both. Niigaan, we'll start with you and the Prime Minister's speech at the World Economic Forum, where he urged middle powers to come together and said the rules-based international order is gone and not coming back, among other things. Just your thoughts, I guess, Niigaan, on Carney's speech.
Well, I've seen some pretty legitimate criticism of the speech, talking about sort of trying to bring old school sort of neoliberalism back to a kind of healthy state within the larger global economic structure. And of course, the fact that Trump has brought in all this protectionism and sort of reducing. What I want to talk about is, there's Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, speaking to the world saying, worry about the community more than the individual. Share more, don't become selfish. I wonder where Mark Carney or the Canadian government or every single Canadian politician in history has learned that idea. You know, when the Europeans came to this place, to this continent, they brought selfishness, they brought individuality, they brought competitiveness. They brought the notion of ore, and that was predominantly bringing the papal bulls from the Catholic Church in the 15th century, saying there are people here, but none of them have rights. They don't act like we do. They're non-Christians. Therefore, we can just take the land, and then we'll operate in competitiveness with each other. What we said is sit in a circle, share, work together, share the moose, work, build treaty. I wonder where Mark Carney learned this idea of working on community more than the individual. I would say that we had a big hand in what he said at Davos this past week.
Nice. Jen, what's your take on the Prime Minister's speech where he said geopolitics are in a rupture?
Well, I think traditionally what we've seen with our relationships internationally, there's been a lot of change. I think it kind of has been escalating over the years. We saw with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then when we saw, what's been going on in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, and then what we're also seeing, between the United States and Canada. I think there's a lot of conversations happening right now that are very, very central to resources. And in my opinion, that's, one of the most controversial centers of all of this is the resources and where we all sit as countries when it comes to those resources. Even, President Donald Trump's threats when it comes to Greenland, it's Arctic sovereignty, it's the resources, it's the ports, it's everything in between. And I think right now, Canada has a lot of different things to figure out. We have a lot of issues here at home when it comes to consultation and consent with First Nations and what that resource development looks like. And then we also have a prime minister and a country on an international stage that are actively trying to advance and sell Canada at an international level. You know, we just saw the Premier of Saskatchewan travel with the Prime Minister to China to try to secure a deal, which they did do. And things are just moving very, very quickly. And I think we're learning that one of our closest trading partners and allies, the United States, isn't as close as it used to be. And we're going to have to diversify that trade and start making new relationships. But where do First Nations fit into that, especially when we're talking about resource development and our critical minerals here in the country?
Right. Nigan, the speech comes just weeks after the United States took control of Venezuela, continues to threaten the annexation of Greenland, where we have 2 reporters right now. How do you think this will play out?
Well, it looks like it's the typical Trump taco, which is Trump always chickens out, because what happened is Trump then got behind closed doors with European leaders. He realized there was a big no, universal no, even from far-right governments, like even out in the UK. He was finding no allies to this move to annex or purchase Greenland, whatever he was sort of moving. He scaled back certainly the talk on the military invasion of Greenland and started talking about purchasing it. That's not going to work. And then, of course, the markets tanked in the United States, and the Dow went down several hundred points almost immediately because they were seeing that this rise in a unified response to Donald Trump resulted in a kind of universal way in which there was A, going to be a big waste of time, and then B, he was just not going to get any headway on that. And of course, let's not forget that none of this really has to do about Greenland. This is, he can build bases at Greenland all day from an agreement going back decades in 1951. This is about distraction from the ongoing challenge or the refusal to release the Epstein files. That's what this is all about. This is about distraction. But larger said is Trump, as usual, announced his victory. There's a reason that when he worked in casinos that he failed miserably, because casinos are about the illusion of other people winning, and Trump just can't have anybody win at any point. He's always got to declare a victory, even if it's an absolute loss. He did not get any headway. He has the exact same deal going forward, but of course he declared that he won, and now he has a deal, or what he said is the principles of a deal, or some kind of values of a deal, or something like that. We'll see nothing come of this. A year from now, we'll all be talking about some other place, probably Cuba, that he'll be threatening to annex next.
Framework is the word you were looking for there, and apparently there is reportedly some sort of framework in place. Jen, how do you think this will play out, and what could it mean for Canada?
Well, I think, President Donald Trump has been doing a lot of deflecting and distracting, especially, when we're talking about the Epstein files. I mean, that was not good. And I think that there's a lot of power at the top that, doesn't want a lot of that information to be sitting as publicly as it has been. But the conversation around the Arctic doesn't just stop at the United States. We know that Russia has had a direct interest. We know that there's been, our security and intelligence agencies here in Canada have found that there's been, spies happening in the Arctic. And the Arctic and our relationship with the Arctic is very heavily dependent on the indigenous governance around the Arctic and how the people up there protect those spaces. And I think when it comes to President Donald Trump, there's threats, but then there's pieces that I don't think are just threats. I think he actually legitimately thinks that some of these are good plans. I think it's a really, really scary ground to go into when we start talking about coercing and forcing sovereign states to just hand over their sovereignty. And not only that, the amount of people, especially Canadians, that are pro-Donald Trump or pro-MAGA that somehow also think this is a good idea. We're starting to see traditional Conservative Party supporters that are now going into the realm of undermining NATO and undermining Western security and undermining border protection and just saying, we're just going to start taking over sovereign states. And, to heck with Denmark and the whole entire thing is just completely wild to me. But I think that this is, not just a threat. I think Donald Trump is legitimately crazy enough to think that this is a good idea, but we have people in Canada now that are also supporting this. And I didn't know we had this many people that were experts on trade and negotiation tactics, because apparently that's a new thing, is that this is just a part of a wonderful scheme of negotiation tactics and nothing to see here. But I think Canada's position in all of this is to take a really strong approach towards the United States, and that, we don't we don't cower in times of pressure like this from the United States, and we support our allies, and we do not endorse the forced removal of sovereign states.
Much more to talk about this over on the podcast, but we're going to leave it there. Thanks to you both.
A
new episode of Nation to Nation is just minutes away. We'll bring you a preview after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And today we find some swans in Scarborough, Ontario, sent in by our viewer Mary Lee Brand. Thanks for sharing with us all. Share your photos. You can send them to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and -1 for Charlottetown, 0 for Halifax. -25 for Kuujjuaq, 28 below in Inukjuak. -9 in Montreal, -20 for Chibougamau. 18 below for Sault Ste. Marie, -11 for Ottawa. 20 below in Thunder Bay, -24 for Sioux Lookout. -26 for Churchill and God's Lake. 22 below for Winnipeg and Brandon, -21 in Dauphin. -23 for Regina, 26 below in North Battleford. -23 in Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -14 for High Level, 22 below for Fort Chipewyan. -17 in Edmonton, 11 below in Lethbridge. +7 with the sun out for Vancouver and Victoria. -7 for Prince George, sunny and 5 below for Smithers. -21 in Old Crow, 16 below in Whitehorse. -24 in Yellowknife, -11 for Norman Wells. 16 below in Sax Harbor, snow and -9 for Paulatuck. -28 for Chesterfield, 29 below for Baker Lake. 34 below for Resolute, -28 in Arctic Bay. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Fraser Needham is standing by to tell us about what's ahead on Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the news, U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to annex Greenland continues to dominate international headlines. This has a direct effect on the people of Nunavut. We talked to Kahnawake reporter Justin Hardy about what he is hearing on the ground. MPs return to Parliament next week, and Toronto Metropolitan University professor Pam Palmater is here to talk about what may be on the agenda in terms of Indigenous issues. And Native Americans are getting caught up in ICE raids down south. Veteran U.S. journalist Mark Trehant is here to tell us about what is happening. All this and more ahead on Nation to Nation.
Looks good. Thanks, Fraser. Looking forward to it. It's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find a whole lot more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGwitch. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.